Shalom, shalom aleichem. It's Zara. I am back with part three, hopefully the final part of this series on the problem of Paul and just me wanting to bring an honesty and an awareness to the writings of Paul that many consider to be inspired by God and or scripture, but also have an easy way to access some information to maybe help people understand why not everyone considers the letters of Paul to be authoritative, nor the word and or inspiration of God. So go back and watch part 1 and 2 so that you have a foundation and a basis for maybe like a working theory or a couple theories, or just the basis of this is why we have some problems. So we did talk about in part 2 where there's essentially the theory amongst scholars, and um, I think it's obvious. A plain reading, an honest plain reading, I think you see the conundrum of it's saying different stuff. Like when you read the letters, the epistles, especially authored, attributed to the authorship of Paul and or his scribe who was with him, it's just saying different things. It's very hard to understand how this is the same person um, saying such different things, and it's hard to harmonize. And so then when you look a little bit deeper, you find out that scholars have seen this conundrum and they've studied it. Scholarship has a lot of different theories here, but I am here to present one that I don't hear talked about, usually, whether it's a Christian circle or it's a any circle of like New Testament. So I know like Messianic people and Hebrew roots people and Hebrew Israelite people, and I think those are all the New Testament people. They tend to not want to say that it's saying different things, and there's this workaround. And I think I did it too, as mental gymnastics at some point, but you just got to be honest and say, hey, it's at least appearing to say different things. So with that, I wanted to read some more for you guys. I am reading from the book, The Canon of the New Testament, its origin, development, and I can't see the rest of the title. And if I try to scroll away, I'm on page 270. Okay, it's fine. I can find it again. I want to tell you guys how to find this book if you so choose. Okay, yeah. The Canon of the New Testament, Its Origin, Development, and Significance by Bruce M. Metzger. Clarendon Press, Oxford. That's the publishers. And so I wanted to read this section. It's 332 digital pages of goodness, if you like that sort of thing. Physical pages, I think it's quite a bit more, but anywho, the game's on, so good. The Pacers won. Okay. I'm still a sports girly, guys. So I wanted to read this section because it's just important, again, to have more than just one person saying something. And I know I was reading from the letters of Paul in their Roman literary context. And this video probably is going to be super long. So you're going to see me like, y'all know my phone cuts off and I'm using my phone instead of my camera, and this thing works with it. But anyway, we're going to read a lot tonight. So just whatever you're doing, I don't know what you're doing, but get some tea. I have my tea. If you're at work, then you may not want to listen to me because I'm kind of monotone, but that's what we're going to do tonight. Read, because I don't just want to give my opinions. I do, but not just my opinions. So I don't just want to build off of the scholar Nina and super old school, like 1800s scholars that I was talking about in parts 1 and 2, I want to bring in some other voices into this chat. So that's what we're doing. So I am on page 264 in print, 270 in the digital version, and it is, again, I'll try to put the links in the chat. Keymarshman.com is the digital library that I use to pull a lot of these resources. So I will try to put that into the description box. You guys know I'd be moving around. I'm busy. Summer is here. Kids are out of school. So it's going to be crazy, but I'm going to try to stay active. So, okay. This section is problems confronting the early church. This is the section 5, the particularity of the Pauline epistles. Unlike the problem occasioned by the plurality of the Gospels in the early church, the plurality of the epistles caused no difficulty. In this case, however, as Dahl has pointed out in a perceptive essay, it was not equally easy to see why epistles written to particular churches on particular occasions should be regarded as universally authoritative and read in all churches. Duh. Okay, this problem was tackled on two fronts: by an attempt at theological justification through number symbolism, and by adjustment of the text in several of the epistles. Number symbolism found its earliest literary expression in the Muratorian canon, with the observation, lines 49 through 50, that Paul, like John in Revelation, had written to 7 churches, and thus to the whole church. This point reappears in the writings of Cyprian, Victorinus of Patau, and later authors. After the inclusion of the epistle to the Hebrews in the Pauline corpus, it became difficult to maintain the idea that Paul wrote to 7 churches. Then it became usual to point out that the total number of the Pauline epistles was 14, or 2 times 7. Furthermore, the Muratorian canon offers a special argument in support of the Catholicity of the epistles sent to individuals. Although Paul wrote out of affection and love to Philemon, Titus, and Timothy, yet they are all held sacred in esteem of the church, Catholic for the regulation of ecclesiastical discipline. This argument obviously has little or no implication to the problem concerning runaway slave Onesimus, and the epistle to Philemon is the only known example of Pauline letter explicitly rejected because of its limited scope. The other means by which several of the Pauline epistles were made more universal or Catholic was by the adjustment of their text. I'll read that again. The other means by which several of the Pauline epistles were made universal or Catholic was by the adjustment of their text. The omission of the words in Rome, in Romans 1, 7, and 15, in certain Greek and Latin manuscripts, as well as the complicated textual problems connected with the place of the doxology and the ending of the epistle, are generally taken as evidence for the existence of more than one recension of Romans, one of which was a Catholicized form of the epistle. Just saying, guys, figure out what's going on. It's okay to believe whatever the hell you want to believe. I don't care. I don't care what you want to believe, but figure out what you believe and why. That's all I'm here for. Okay. Furthermore, it is unlikely that the absence of a geographical destination in the text of Ephesians 1:1, as witnessed by the oldest manuscripts, is the original text. Apart from the possibility that copies of the epistle were sent by the writer to more than one destination, the text without any specific address is to be understood as a result, once again, of a secondary Catholicizing. So that's Romans and Ephesians. I'm just going to throw this out there. Most of Christian doctrine and subsequent theology, or theology and subsequent doctrine, finds its genesis in the book of Romans and Ephesians as far as Reformed theologians are concerned, in my opinion. I don't know, I wasn't there, but in my opinion. To continue reading. The same tendency is also probably to be observed even in the text of 1 Corinthians. The clause, together with all, which comes rather awkwardly in 1 Corinthians 1:2b, is often held to be an interpolation by which the epistle was given a wider and more ecumenical address. By way of summary, Dahl concludes, the particularity of the Pauline epistles was felt as a problem from a time before the Corpus Paulinum was published and until it had been incorporated into a complete canon of New Testament scripture. I'm going to pause here. Later on, the problem was no longer felt, but the tendency towards generalizing has remained, not only when the epistles were used as dogmatic proof text, but also when they served as sources for reconstruction of general biblical theology or a system of Paulinism. Yet to the apostle himself, letters to particular churches written on special occasions were the proper literary form for making theological statements. Of this fact, both exegesis and theology, not to mention preaching, have to take account. The particularity of the Pauline epistles points to the historicalness of all theology, even that of the apostle. So I'm just the messenger, and I think it's important. And I wanted to, there was something that I read. It was in this book, and I don't think I'm going to find it again because Lord knows this is a hefty book. And as I was reading, I need to find a highlight feature or something or learn how to use it. I'm sure I have it. But it actually talked about why just accepting the facts basically for what they are doesn't mean it's not true. Doesn't mean you can't believe what you believe. It just means it's patchwork. Somebody, in my opinion, Marcion and or his followers and or the school that he was a part of, got a hold of a couple of Pauline epistles, and I also think completely forged a few and then circulated them. And then I think the Proto-Orthodox got a hold of it and was like, this is not going to work, and doctored it up. And then I think the Church of Rome got a hold of it and said, this ain't going to work for us, and then doctored it up, which is why you have, like I said, in those Greek and Latin manuscripts. But I think that there was, again, patchwork going on. And I think if we accept this, I think, number one, we'll have more grace with everybody, understanding that we don't need to argue for millennia about circumcisions and about food sacrifice to idols and about whether or not you can marry and about divorce and about everything else that is women preaching and teaching and talking at all, and whether or not you actually have to have a baby to go to heaven, and just all of this really wild shiz that is presented only in the New Testament, only by Paul. And then you're just what is going on? I think if we understand that it's a patchwork, we would be less dogmatic, as it said, and we would come to terms with the fact that we can read this stuff. And the same way I enjoy, you guys know one of my favorites, the same way I enjoy the Iliad, we can just like enjoy it for what it is, like these ancient religious writings that are spiritual and philosophical in nature, but we don't have to necessarily believe that I have to dogmatically keep to this and beat other people over the head with it because my soul salvation and everlasting life depends on it, because it's patchwork and it's Paul didn't actually write this. And even if he did, he's just a dude who like maybe loved God, maybe didn't, maybe God loved him, maybe didn't. We don't know. So, why are we living our lives from a book where we don't even know where it comes from? And I say that with respect, not with like, like atheists sometimes get like a little too cheeky and you're like you have faith too. Like, don't be bagging on people who are agnostic or who are religious or who believe in Christ or Muhammad or Ahura Mazda, shout out to Ahura Mazda, or whoever else they believe in, Buddha, whatever, Bahula, who else? Allah, because I know like people don't believe in Muhammad, but you know what I mean. We don't have to be like that. We can understand, and we don't have to be how they can be like a little cheeky. We can just be like, hey, I get it. We just believe different things and we have good reasons, but we know why we believe what we believe. So I wanted to follow that up with, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Seneca. He wasn't stoic, but he kind of was, right? So he gets thrown sometimes into the whole stoic philosopher bucket. I would not put him completely there. I probably wouldn't put him there at all. However, people put him there. Whatever. That's a different conversation for a different day. If you guys want to talk Western philosophy, I am here for that. Maybe we'll do that because I'm here for it, but not to bore you guys. So anyway, there was alleged, we're going to use these words, alleged correspondence between the Apostle Paul and Seneca, the philosopher. And so this used to be considered unofficial, unauthoritative canon. I'm using that word very loosely, but canon to some Christian groups. And I believe some Christian groups still see it that way. And so I wanted to, oh no, that's the wrong thing. What am I opening? I wanted to read from that, but now it went bye-bye. You guys can tell my mom I'm like, bye-bye. Where is it? I'll just reload it. It's fine. Okay, I found it. So it is the suppressed Gospels and Epistles of the original New Testament. That's the book I'm reading it from. It compiles all of the things. And so I'm going to read a portion. I'm going to read a portion of the epistles of St. Paul, the apostle, to Seneca, with Seneca to Paul, because I just found it fascinating. Chapter 1, Nea Seneca to Paul, greeting. I suppose, Paul, you have been informed of that conversation which passed yesterday between me and my Lucilius concerning hypocrisy and other subjects, for there were some of your disciples in company with us. For when we were retired into the Celestinian gardens, through which they were also passing, I need to make this bigger. That would be the smart thing to do. And would have gone another way. By our persuasion, they joined company with us. I desire you to believe that we much wish for your conversation. We were much delighted with your book of many epistles, which you have written to some cities and chief towns of provinces, and contain wonderful instructions for moral conduct. Such sentiments as I suppose you were not the author of, but only the instrument of conveying, though sometimes both the author and the instrument. For such is the sublimity of those doctrines and their grandeur, that I suppose the age of a man is scarce sufficient to be instructed and perfected in the knowledge of them. I wish your welfare, my brother. Farewell. So this is Paul to Seneca, chapter 2. I received your letter yesterday with pleasure, to which I could immediately have written an answer, had the young man been at home, whom I intended to have sent to you. For you know when and by whom, at what season, and to whom I must deliver everything which I send. I desire, therefore, you would not charge me with negligence if I wait for a proper person. I reckon myself very happy in having the judgment of so valuable a person, that you are delighted with my epistles. For you would not be esteemed a censor, a philosopher, or be the tutor of so great a prince and a master of everything if you were not sincere. I wish you lasting prosperity. Okay, so you guys get the vibes. You guys get the vibes. They are very amiable towards one another. But there is this part in here that I read where I was like, oh, Chapter 9, Seneca to Paul. I know that my letter, wherein I acquainted you that I had read to the emperor your epistles, does not so much affect you as the nature of the things contained in them, which do so powerfully divert men's minds from their former manners and practices, that I have always been surprised and have been fully convinced of it by many arguments heretofore. Let us therefore begin afresh, and if anything heretofore has been imprudently acted, do you forgive. I have sent you a book, De Copia Verborum. Farewell, dearest Paul. And so they go through this whole, like, y'all just read it. It's very long, and I don't want to be on here too long, but you guys just read it, and I just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to make of this. And as I was looking it up, there's obviously discrepancy. And he talks about the Christians and the Jews and how they've been treated. And it kind of, he like Seneca kind of gets into the authorship of some of these things and talks about how, like, it almost paints Paul in this light of, to me, of like, he's infiltrating almost like the community, and he is very clearly being recognized by Roman, the Roman populace and leadership as someone who is not turning Jews and Christians against one another, not that, but basically turning Jews away from their practice and their faith and the staunch strictness maybe that they had towards it, and making them more into quote unquote Christians, which basically were like Romans, but like not super terrible Romans who were like super pagan, but like baby pagan Romans that were like tolerable to the leadership. And Seneca basically is like praising him for it. I don't know. That's how it reads to me. So I would be really interested to know if it reads that way to you guys. But I wanted to just bring that up and read just a little bit from there, because the book that I've been reading to you guys, The Letters of Paul in Their Roman Literary Context, by, I'll tell you guys in a minute who it's by. It's by Nina, I forget her name, but it's the main one I've been reading. So click on something somewhere and you guys will be able to see it. But she writes this. Page 138. It's Seneca's moral epistles and Pauline letters as teachings. Fictional or literary letters, our interest here, grew in popularity from approximately 100 BCE. So this is before Common Era. So this is before Jesus. Okay. To 250 CE. So like 250 AD, like after Jesus. Okay. A period marked by the presence of sophists, rhetors, and professional teachers. Fictional letters and the rise in freestanding pseudonymous letters collections appear to be the product of sophistic schools or sophistic schools. C. Costa comments that fictional letters were extremely popular in the Greco-Roman world. Their popularity is attributed to early educational methods. As rhetors and their students practice rhetorical exercises using the letter form, Michael Trapp comments that the composition of stylish and or contentful fictitious letters was felt both as a stimulating challenge to a writer's abilities and as a source of educated pleasure to the knowledgeable reader. Patricia Rosenmeyer reviews in detail the late 2nd and early 3rd century CE collected fictional letters of Alciphron, Aelian, and Philostratus. The letters of these collections sketch short emotive scenes, invent scenarios, and provide brief glimpses into the lives of mostly ordinary people dealing with momentary crises. Philostratus, I'm going to say Philostratus, for instance, indicates that he can argue two sides of an issue, one of the hallmarks of the sophistic enterprise. Predicated on the ideals of friendship, letters acknowledge, develop, and promote a relationship between sender and receiver. Trapp remarks, more obviously than many other kinds of writings, letters exist in order to establish and conduct relationships between senders and recipients. John Henderson strengthens this notion, adding that letters suggest intimacy. According to him, letters are a hug of words between soulmate inseparables. Thus, to deploy the letter genre is to enter a friendly, or what has also been called a pro-social domain. Epistolographers, goodness, this woman and her words, epistolographers with a teaching agenda benefit from the friendly pro-social domain native to letters. The presumption of friendship facilitates persuasion, as Cesarelli et al. Comment. The inherently pro-social nature of epistolatory discourse expects author and addressee to find common ground and hence arguably softens the didactic strictures that make other. I should blow this up. I keep forgetting that like it's not a book. I can blow it up. It doesn't have to be so small. Okay, anyway. Where was I? Strictures that make other genres employed in pedagogic settings, such as straightforward lecturing and probing cross-examination, less socially palatable. Letters thus form an ideal medium for teaching and preaching. This is why he wrote the letters. And so she goes into more to back that up, but then this is the section where it talks about Seneca and Paul. To advance their teaching agendas, Seneca and the authors of Pauline letters benefit from, but also exploit many of these well-known characteristics of the genre, namely their friendly, intimate, pro-social domain. Their presumed trustworthiness and their inherent attractiveness to external or secondary readers, their intended audience. Both the Senecan and Pauline letter collections can be defined as protreptic rhetoric masquerading as genuine letters. Protreptic rhetoric urges the reader to convert to a way of life, join a school, or accept a set of teachings as normative for the reader's life. Protreptic rhetoric employs exhortation to urge audiences to something and away from something else. While both Senecan and Pauline collections can be characterized as protreptic, their styles differ. In contrast to the authors of the Pauline letters who deploy a significant amount of direct and explicit exhortation, the Senecan author is far more subtle in his means of persuasion. Accordingly, Pauline letters can be said to evoke a greater sense of urgency than the moral epistles. So it goes on to talk about Lucius Annaeus Seneca and the character, I guess, the Apostle Paul. Really, seriously, guys, read this book. It's so good. But I just thought like all of that tied in so well to me and my brain. And again, these are different books. I'm going to try to put the link to each of them in the description box below. But I do really want to know what you guys are thinking about some of this information. Is this new information to you guys? Is it old information? Does it change the way, not necessarily that you believe, because I don't know that I'm super interested in that, only a little bit, but does it change the way I think you want to interact with people, the way you want to live and be a fellow human being? Because I don't know if you guys saw the short. If you didn't, go watch the short. But I was reading something and having a conversation, and it was just heavily about taking all of these things. All of it was based on Proverbs 4:7. That just came to mind. But in all of your getting, get wisdom. In all of your getting of wisdom, get understanding, Bina. And it's about like pulling from the abstract and pulling from the raw materials, even, and making something concrete in the mix of it all. And again, watch the short because it gets into the Sephir Road and all of that. It's only 3 minutes, so it's not that deep. But that is where I was taking a lot of this. It's not just to beat up on Paul or beat up on Christians or beat up on the Bible or whatever, whatever the hell people do on the YouTubes these days. It's more about, for me, saying, I want to understand why I think the way that I think. Why is my brain sending the signals and the red flags? Is there information out there that I'm missing that will alert me to a greater truth? And then when I find that truth, what am I going to choose to do with it? And so for me, I'm going to choose to have compassion. I'm going to choose to have understanding. I'm going to choose to have grace. I'm going to choose to challenge those in my world who I think maybe this is sort of the epiphany or the information or whatever they're looking for. Have these conversations. This is how we develop our soul. This is how we develop our minds. This is how we develop as human beings. And so that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm here for. So please, if you are someone who is Christian or whatever your label, if you believe in those letters and that human being to be led by God or divinely inspired or divinely led, however you want to word that, please don't hear me as being disrespectful to your faith. That is not something I ever intend to do, but I also understand intention versus impact, etc. So I understand and take responsibility if it does hurt your feelings, but that's not the intention that I'm trying to bring. So anyway, this is probably a 30 or 40-minute video at this point. I just don't know how people do like short content. I'm a long content girl. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe if you wish. Definitely comment though, because I be reading y'all's comments and I'd be wanting to know. And sometimes I'd be like, oh my God. And sometimes I'd be like, did you copy and paste this from ChatGPT? Okay. But anyway, comment anyway. Let's have the discussion. Thanks for watching. If you got this far, I do appreciate it. I love when people listen to me ramble and then actually have full opinions and feedback on what I said because they listen to everything I said. So anyway, guys, until next time, Imir Hashem. Bye, everyone.